Welcome to SEC Football Live here on the 440 Sports Network. That is Jared Stillman. I am Braden Gall. Trey Wallace taking a little bit of time off after the end of the regular season. Jared, good morning, sir. How are you?
I am fabulous. How are you this morning?
You know, I'm doing great. You got that Super Bowl hat real low on your head. Is that late nights and lots of travel that's doing that to you, Stillman?
The Super Bowl hat. Okay, let me move it up a little bit so that it's better.
No,
Now my hair's just a total mess. I haven't. My son woke up super early this morning, and he went to school, and I went back to bed, and and I woke up at like 8:52, which is usually super late for most people, but I don't feel like it was super late because I was up at like 5. My son doing his thing. So for me, I'm here, and then I have I have a little energy. I don't drink coffee, so I gotta get a little energy.
No coffee? You don't drink any coffee at all?
I think coffee's disgusting.
It's good for you though. It's way better for you than that stuff. That's for sure.
It is absolutely better, but I find the actual coffee to be disgusting.
All right, there you go.
Not much of a coffee drinker. I wish I was, because to your point, coffee is much better. But again, it's kind of disgusting.
I totally disagree, but that's okay. We can exist in America in 2026, have a differing opinion, and still be buddies, and still be friends, and still get along. It's actually possible. It can be done. So, coming up today on the show, I wanted to have you in with Trey, kind of taking some time off. I thought, look, I want you to go big picture with me today on the show, and there are so many massive things happening in college football, in particular the SEC. But you are the master of pinpointing the thing that people care about. And I want to get into the things that we think people are going to care about in the offseason in 2026. And that could involve everything from a new coordinator at a team, a new quarterback at a team. It could involve the entire conference trying to end the Big Ten's run for a 4th championship. It could be transfer portal. It could be Congress. It could be court cases. It could be new coaches. It could be a whole number of things. So we're going to kind of go back and forth today on the show and talk through the most interesting, most entertaining, most important, most engaging storylines of 2026 in the offseason, things that you are looking forward to seeing or covering or just being a fan of as the season unfolds. So I think you can do that. And so if you want to get involved, please jump into the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in terms of the things that you are most interested in seeing. And let us know, of course, if we are up and running across all platforms. There we go. I think we finally got up on the Twitter machine. So if you could share that for us and repost that, Facebook, Twitter, thumbs up, notifications turned on the YouTube page. Shout out to our new sponsors, and that is Craft Beer in Nashville. So we've got, look, there is science behind this, Stillman. There is science behind civilization existing because of the invention of alcohol in moderate doses, in small amounts, bringing people together. It's incredibly important for your health, actually long-term. The side effects of having a beer or two or a glass of wine with your friends, family, or strangers is actually enormously beneficial. And so I wanted to highlight a few great local tap rooms here in Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, if you get a chance. Yazoo Brewing Company up in Madison, if you're on the north side of town. It overlooks the Cumberland River. Very relaxing place to bring your kids. They got Grill Shack burgers and fries in there. Great, kind of the original OG local brewery here in Nashville. So if you find Yazoo anywhere, the Pale Ale, Dos Perros, the Gerst, all of it is spectacular. So go check them out. If you're looking for the best food in a tap room, go check out Tennessee Brew Works. Amazing beer, but every bit of their food menu is high level cooking. And each item, even down to the ketchup, Stillman, has beer in it. So everything they make has beer in it. So the burger, the buns, the ketchup, the veggies, the fish tacos, the fries, everything has some beer element in it, and it's outstanding. They have shoestring fries with that seasoning on them. It's outstanding stuff. So check out Tennessee Brew Works. And, of course, East Nashville Beer Works, which you can see right here. I've got the hat on. They've got a location, the original location in East Nashville. So if you're there, you can check them out. They got the pizzas. They got the playground for kids. But then out in Wilson County, if you're out on the east side of town, they have an enormous brand new cathedral of a tap room. They've got a dog park. They've got a playground for kids. They've got the drop down LED projection screen out back. They've got the terrace up top, which is 21 and up. Great for kids downstairs, great for adults upstairs. So they kind of have thought of everything. And I'm telling you, this is science. So go have a beer with your friends at a local tap room, be in community with each other, and you'll be a healthier, happier person, Jared.
Amen.
a man of many words. Okay, so I want to go back and forth here, and I just kind of want to alternate. And I'm going to start with you. And is there one? My first question is there one story? Is there one character? Is there one team that you think will dominate the headlines and take over our conversations throughout the course of this offseason as we get into August and the start of actual football?
So I came up with 3 stories that I think are really important to me. And I wonder, do you want to go 1 and then 1 and then 2 and then 2? Or do you want me to tell you the 3 stories all at one time?
Well, I want to know. I actually want to know which one, because I mean this. Like, I think you have an innate ability to pinpoint what people are going to be paying attention to. And I want to know if there is, because like I could make the case for Texas and Arch Manning. I can make the case for Lane Kiffin. I can make the case for any number of other stories. But is there one, in your opinion, that will take over or dominate?
So I think as far as the offseason is concerned, I think the number 1 story is going to be eligibility. I mean, I think this Charles Bediako situation is, that was really pushing the limits of eligibility. And the reality is, as long as we go without a collective bargaining agreement in college sports, I think the more you're going to see people pushing, and I have no idea how judges are going to rule and how appeals courts are going to rule. We see that with Diego Pavia, Joey Aguilar. I don't know how these courts are going to rule about eligibility. I mean, again, it's really hard for me. I have a hard time believing that you can enforce rules against people that don't agree to the rules themselves. And that's why every time you sign up for anything online, you have to agree to the terms and conditions. I mean, so when there is not a collective bargaining agreement in college sports, you're going to see everybody push the envelope, and the courts will decide what's right or what's wrong or what's legal or what's not. And without a collective bargaining agreement, it's very difficult for me to see how the colleges can really set these arbitrary rules and just say, well, you know what? You can't come back and play college because you played a little bit in the G League or whatever. And yet at the same time, like with Charles Bediako, I mean, that just felt like a straight ringer situation. And I don't know what the legal basis for declaring him ineligible is, but when it comes to like the eligibility, I think this is the first time that we're going to see people actually have an opinion that is not just pro player. So, and what I mean by that is I felt like before the Baylor basketball player had decided to try to play basketball, I think he was drafted, but he never played in the NBA and maybe never played in the G League, but played in Europe or something. And he decided that he was going to go play at Baylor. That was the first time where I saw the public actually be like, whoa, what are we doing here? And so I don't know how far this is going to go in college football. I mean, I think Shedeur Sanders last year would have been a great example of this, in which Shedeur Sanders, we all thought was going to be a 1st or 2nd round pick. Shedeur Sanders did not get picked by the end of the 2nd day of the draft. If Shedeur Sanders had wanted to go back to college, could Shedeur Sanders have done that? Now, from a NCAA rule standpoint, Shedeur Sanders couldn't have gone back to college. But again, who's really challenged that? So with this year, is there going to be a player that
Trinidad Chambliss? So
Trinidad Chambliss, is there? But he may actually end up going in the 1st round or the 2nd round or something like that. Is there going to be a player who in April says, well, I thought I was going to be a 2nd round pick. I went in the 6th. I'd like to go back to college. And I think that's going to be a huge story.
I don't disagree with you. You've got the Chambliss case hearing, I believe, is this Thursday on February 12th. College Sports Crew in the comments. People don't care about court cases. We care about football on the field. Well,
I agree with that.
I do too. But Trinidad Chambliss, Joey Aguilar, Diego Pavia, these are all people that want to be on a field. So it's incredibly relevant to the team that is trying to get them eligible or doesn't get them eligible. I think the one area that I think you probably pinpointed that I think is going to be the most interesting to watch in this area is the shift in public perception. And that by and large, most fans, if you're like an old stodgy, I don't know, like some 80-year-old who like loves the Sugar Bowl from 1975 and what it meant to the players and the teams and the fans and the community, like this probably isn't for you. But by and large, most media and fans, and honestly, most coaches I've spoken to, are totally pro player getting more benefits over the course of the last 15 years, whether that's payment, whether that's freedom of movement, whether that's helping to get them graduated in a better way, in a more efficient way. Most everybody is sort of like, you can't have $1 billion industry with a free labor force. That's not capitalism. So it's not going to work. But it's gone so far the other direction that I think you're starting to see sort of like, I'm going to call them like normies, like normie college football fans who aren't sort of like deep in the weeds on all this stuff, saying like, really, like 6 teams in 6 years? Like that seems like it's a little too much movement, a little too much of this, a little too much of that. It's a little too chaotic for me. And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but at the end of the day, I do think there is, watching people go to a professional sport and come back to college is a bridge too far for most fans. They're just like, this is wrong. This isn't healthy. This isn't good for the sport. Let's put an age cap on it. Maybe that's how you do this, right? 25 years old and you can't go back to college. Like you can play college sports until you're 25, because SEC baseball is very passionate and important. And I know you know that. And they're going to have, like, what happens if you got drafted at a college or at a high school?
Sure.
You played 3 years in AA ball. You've never sniffed the majors. Why can't that person go back to play baseball at LSU or Mississippi State or whatever? Like, I don't know. So I think you're right that there's a paradigm shift, or maybe public perception is shifting on that, I think, and that's a good point.
So here would be what I would say to the guy in the chat that says people don't care about court cases. They only care about what happens on the field. I agree with that. But I said this years ago when I was doing talk radio in Louisville, and it was a college sports market, and there's nothing that goes on during the summer. And this was when Johnny Manziel and Todd Gurley got suspended for signing autographs. And that brought the whole should the players be paid argument up. And then with the should the players be paid argument came in, well, what about Title IX? And what's that going to mean for the, and this is what I said. I think, as far as fans are concerned, this really is pro sports, because I sit my ass on the couch on a Saturday to watch a Louisville football game, and I have the same amount of care about that game as I do when I sit my ass on the couch to watch an Atlanta Braves baseball game, or when I sit my ass on the couch to watch a Titans game, or a Dallas Cowboys game, or whatever. And so to the fans, this has always been similar to pro sports. Again, do you care if these players go to college? Of course you don't. So go to school, what their major, who gives a rat's ass? So I think as long as none of the court cases affect the play on the field, when we sit down and we watch the games, when we sit our asses on the couch, if it doesn't change how we watch sports or how we enjoy football, then I don't think we care. But when there are boardroom decisions like the death of the Pac-12 that absolutely affect how we consume college football, how we enjoy college football, how we watch college football, then I think people care.
How a champion is determined?
I think that those things matter. And again, you brought up baseball. I think it's a great point. I mean, how many guys got drafted after 3 years in baseball could have a 4th or 5th year in which they could come back and play baseball after 10 years in the major leagues? Joe Mauer got drafted out of high school as the number 1 overall pick. Can Joe Mauer just go back to Florida State and play for 4 years in baseball?
Derek Jeter can go to Michigan.
I mean, I think it's part of the discussion at this point.
Yeah.
So I absolutely understand the idea of like, I don't give a rat's ass about what the politicians say. I get so mad at SEC Media Days every year when at SEC Media Days, all the coaches get up there and the coaches say, well, we got to do something about this NIL and the transfer portal. It's ruining college football, and we got to do something about it, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but I don't.
What is that, Gus? Is that Gus Malzahn?
I was just doing my typical.
We're gonna run the ball left. We're gonna run the ball right. We're gonna run the ball up the middle.
But like I hear that, and I'm always like, Coach, stay in your lane. Like, tell us about the defensive line. because I don't give a rat's ass what Lane Kiffin thinks about what Congress should do. And I don't need you to waste everybody's time trying to lobby your local politicians.
Hang on.
Go bother Tommy Tuberville.
We do have
go
former
see if he'll get off his ass and actually do something about it, which he will not.
We do have former SEC football coaches in Congress right now. So.
That's the other thing that kind of drives me crazy is I'm like, Congress has bigger fish to fry than college football. I'm sorry. They do.
I agree with you, but they ain't frying any fish of any kind these days.
I know,
but they're not experts on this subject matter either. That's the other thing is they're not
experts on anything.
No,
you think Tommy Tuberville is actually
an
expert on foreign policy?
Of course not.
Did he learn that getting ready for Kentucky?
There are plenty of subject matter experts in elected office. None of them are sports experts. Very few of them are. So I'll go next then because I agree with you. That's sort of a broad story, not just in the SEC, but I agree that's a major issue here. The one for me, and this will, I don't want to belabor this, but I am fascinated by what it could do to the sport, and that is sort of this three-peat for the Big Ten, going for a fourth different team trying to win a championship. I think Michigan is going to be better. I think Penn State's going to be better. Indiana could be very good. Ohio State's going to be loaded. Oregon with Dante Moore is going to be loaded. Like, they're going to be another great conference. And the question is sort of like, we've seen this in basketball where the SEC and Greg Sankey said, enough is enough. We've got to fix basketball. They bring in Mike Tranghese from the Big East. They kind of do a deep dive, peeling back the layers to try to understand where they were failing in this sport. That's not really been, core to the SEC's existence for a long time. And they go about making what arguably was the best basketball conference in history a year ago or 2 years ago. And so their strategy around that was very calculated, and it worked. And I am curious if there is something like that happens this offseason. And it's really hard to know what that could be outside of investment, but the SEC's never had a problem with money or with investment. They are going to give over $1 billion distributed to the SEC coming up in a couple of months when they do the revenue distribution. $72.5 million per school. Texas and Oklahoma will get the full share this year for the first time. That is up from $54 million last year. These are unprecedented numbers, and that doesn't even include the new playoff contract that's going to kick in this upcoming season. And so what are they going to do? Like, is there a plan? Is there a strategy? Do they think they need to change things? Is it about scheme? Is it about offense and defense? Is it about roster management? Is it what is the counterpunch from the SEC? Because the SEC, when they went and got Texas and Oklahoma, there was no counterpunch to that expansion. The Big Ten tried and did their best job, and I would say as good a job as they could have by getting Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA. They're these leagues punch and counterpunch. That's all they do. Back in the early 90s, the Big Ten signed an enormous contract with ESPN to put Big Ten football on cable. First of its kind. Jim Delaney gets all the credit in the world for doing that. What then became, what's the counterpunch to the SEC, right? Like, so there's got to be a counter strategy here, and I don't know what it is specifically. I think we're going to start to see as the next few months unfold. I think we're going to, whether it's rules, whether it's money, whether it's investment, whether it's threatening to break away. I don't know what it is, but I think the SEC is going to have some concerted strategy to say internally, and then they'll leak, of course, like, this is what we're going to do to go out and reclaim our dominant spot in the sport, even if the SEC was the best conference in football last year. Like, it doesn't matter. You got to win the championship to claim that.
What a bitch move that would be to threaten to break away just because the Big Ten's won.
They already are. They already are. But both of them are, frankly. Like, they know that they have all the power, and the two of them can just, and we've talked a lot about this on the show, so we don't need to go further down the list. But I'm just curious if there is a particular specific strategy to counterpunch. That's all. And losing will drive the SEC to do that more than anything else.
I don't actually look at the Big Ten winning 3 straight titles as a, like, this is going to sound crazy. I don't look at this as like a sign of Big Ten dominance, but I do feel like the SEC not winning a title for 3 years is a sign of SEC weakness. And I don't know why I feel that way. I actually kind of look at it more micro when it comes to those storylines. Like, and this is where I was like, do you want me to come up with the big storylines, and just throw them out there right away? Or do you want me to go one here, there, whatever? because the two big storylines in college football for me, one is Kurt Cignetti the next Nick Saban? Like, in today's era, can you have a next Nick Saban where the guy wins 2 out of 3 titles or 2 out of 4 titles the way Saban did? Is Indiana going to be back in the national championship game? It's going to be really hard to do that every single year when you have to replace your quarterback. But
why would you skip over Kirby in that conversation? Why wouldn't he be the next Nick Saban? 2 titles, preseason top 10 team.
In this era of college football, where where everybody is paying the players, which the first couple of years, everybody was kind of getting their feet wet, figuring out how NIL worked. That was when Kirby won his titles. Kirby is not winning at the clip that Kurt Cignetti is. Kurt Cignetti went into the college football playoff and smoked everybody until the national title game, which I feel like they won semi-comfortably. So I understand that Kirby would be, looked like he was going to be the next Saban, and he's won 2 titles. I think the job Cignetti's done, given where Cignetti's done it,
I agree,
is actually more impressive than Kirby. I would say 1 title at Indiana is more impressive than 2 titles at Georgia. So I look at Cignetti, and I'm like, this guy, in my opinion, Kurt Cignetti is the best pound-for-pound coach in college football. And I wonder if he can turn Indiana into a machine.
I don't disagree with your point about Cignetti being the best coach in college football this year and maybe the last 2 years. I think you have to do it more than once. I think you have to be mentioned with Saban and, frankly, with Kirby. Because what's fascinating, one of my storylines is how Kirby is going about building his program, which is it's got some Dabo Sweeney to it, but without like the goofball like Hilljack of Dabo Sweeney, right? Like I'm a proper Saban assassin trained champion who's going to go about building it this old way. Because my theory is that like we were talking about this, as the pendulum continues to swing on every issue, it always goes back and forth, right? And what's going to become a major asset for a football coach, in particular at the highest levels, is going to be stability. Stability. What do corporations love? Corporations love predictable, stable economic environments. They want to know what their revenues are going to be, their expenses and their challenges, and they want to predict them, and they want to be able to adapt to them beforehand. And so if you know what the vast majority of your roster is going to look like, and you're not trying to fill it with tons of transfer portal pieces, you're still building through more traditional routes with elite players. Certainly the depth is not there. Kirby has said as much. But he is trying to go about it in a different way than Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin was, than Cignetti is, than Dan Lanning at Oregon, and even what Steve Sarkisian is doing at Texas, which is adapting a little bit more and going and getting elite weapons, the Cam Colemans and the Hollywood Smothers, and like going to get these guys. And so I'm fascinated if, like, I think on paper, Georgia's as good as Texas, and they might be the 2 best teams on paper going into the offseason, let's call it. If Kirby's methodology works this year, I think your point about he didn't really do it when everyone was paying, I think there's a lot of truth in that. I still think if he comes back, I mean, they've won 10 games. They won SEC championship last year, like 2 years ago.
I don't give a shit about 10 games of the SEC championship.
What I'm saying is Georgia was one of the 5 or 8 best teams in America the last like 6 seasons.
Yeah,
so
but that doesn't make you Nick Saban. We finished number 8. Like, okay, like that. Oh, great. Number 8. Woo!
Well, I think it's unfair to say anybody's Nick Saban. Kurt Cignetti's not going to win 6 national championships. If he does, I'll apologize to you. I'll say you're right.
I don't know that. So. He is such a good coach.
Agree.
If this were the old day of college football, where Fernando Mendoza's his quarterback for 2 years or 3 years, and he's got good recruiting classes, and he can develop them, and I don't even know what makes Cignetti so special. But Cignetti is an incredible coach. Everybody has been looking for that guy who is so disciplined, who is so buttoned up, who is so just.
He's a psychopath.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what people want in Saban. But, like, Lane Kiffin is not like Saban at all.
No.
Cignetti is the guy who has in my opinion, emulated Saban's psychosis the best.
What?
So I ask.
No. I hear you.
I'm asking if he can be the next Nick Saban. And the other thing about Nick Saban is this. And I know Nick Saban didn't win a lot at Michigan State, but I feel like Alabama Nick Saban could have pretty much done that anywhere. That if Nick Saban had gone to Mississippi State, that Nick Saban could have won national championships at Mississippi State. I feel like if Nick Saban had gone to Florida State, Nick Saban could have won national championships at Florida State.
Yes,
I felt that way about Nick Saban. If Cignetti can turn Indiana into a dynasty,
which he has not done yet,
if you can do that, what can't you do?
No, I
and
don't
so
disagree.
that's why I think that's a big question here. So when you talk about the Big Ten's dominance, I'm not so I don't look at the Big Ten winning titles and think that Michigan, Ohio State, Indiana, that's a sign of a conference that's got it completely figured out, because Oregon in each of the last 3 years has absolutely choked. And I know that they've only been in the Big Ten for 2 years, but they've choked.
Well, but they've only choked against the team that won the national championship. So,
well, no, I mean, they choked against Washington,
a team that played in the net. They've only lost 5 games, Jared, and all of them were against teams that played in the national championship game. So here's the thing: I agree with your point about the Big Ten, and I've said this on this show before. Like, you cannot have the best version of the Big Ten if it's the worst Wisconsin I've seen in 30 years. It's one of the worst USCs we've seen in modern history. It's a bad Michigan State. Like, Nebraska's not what it's supposed to be. UCLA is a dumpster fire. Like, you can't say that this is the best version of the Big Ten if a bunch of premier programs are like not as good as they could be. I do think, though, if they, I think Matt Campbell's going to do well at Penn State. I think Pat Fitzgerald's going to do great at Michigan State. I think Washington's going to take a step forward this year. My point is if another team comes, and I'm not as interested in the Big Ten of it all, because I agree with you. I think depth-wise, pound for pound, the SEC was a better conference. I think at the top, Indiana was special. And I think last year, Ohio State was one of the most loaded and expensive rosters we've ever seen. So I think I agree, like Michigan. I do think there's lessons to be learned, though. And again, I've said this before. The SEC should be taking these notes, which is Michigan taught us all retention. Retention is critical. Ohio State taught us 5-star roster building plus elite spending on premier players at certain positions, Caleb Downs, Quidshot Junkins, etc. And then I think Indiana told us that there is a lot of value in the elite psychopath head coach who's just better than everybody else, with a lot of veteran players, older players on the team. But if you look at the bracket, just elite, let's just call it the Elite Eight this past year, you had so many different ways of building teams. I mean, Georgia has, I think, 4 to 6 players that are transfers playing in their 2 deep, whereas Ole Miss had 17 or 18. Like, there's various ways to skin the cat here. And so I am curious which of those ways finds success this year in the SEC. And Kirby is doing it in such a different way than Ole Miss and Ohio State and Indiana that I'm curious to see if that still works. And maybe it's too soon for that the pendulum to swing back to that level of that style of development and growth. But I think stability will become an asset. At some point in the near future, stability will become an asset and predictability will become an asset. And Georgia has more of that than anybody else right now in the SEC. So we'll see.
If you were starting a program, the University of Braden, Gall, who would you rather have be the head coach, Kirby Smart or Coach Cignetti?
I'm okay with either one.
No, don't do that. You got to give me one.
Take Kirby. I think I would take Kirby.
I think that's crazy. I think Cignetti's the best coach in college football. And
I don't have a problem with that argument.
And I believe that, again, that psychotic nature of Cignetti, I think that discipline that Cignetti has, I think the way that Cignetti understands today's game, I believe that Cignetti is, and I don't know if he's going to build a dynasty at Indiana or not, but I want to see if he's going to. That's kind of my big, the first year that Indiana made the playoffs with Cignetti and Curtis Rourke, it was kind of like, okay, hey, way to go, little old Indiana. We're proud of you. You've done a great job.
Yeah.
And then even last year with Indiana, it was like, man, Indiana, they look like they're doing a good job. They went to Oregon and they beat Oregon and they looked pretty good doing it. But, who knows, maybe that was fluky. Then they beat Ohio State. And it was like, well, when you beat Ohio State, you beat Oregon and you're undefeated, you have to be the number 1 team, no matter what anybody says when they see your helmet. Then they just obliterated Alabama, which I kind of in hindsight feel bad for Kalen DeBoer, because everybody crapped on Kalen DeBoer after Indiana just dumped Alabama in the Rose Bowl. And I think that was kind of a brand thing. That was Indiana versus Alabama.
Like Oregon, Dan Lanning didn't take nearly the beating that Kalen DeBoer has taken.
No.
Yeah,
and then Indiana did the same thing to Oregon. And for me, watching that game, I was like, oh my God, Indiana might be and
Oregon is so much better than Alabama too. So they had no business being that poorly destroyed. Okay, so let's go into what's your next one here. Let's drill down a little bit further. What else you got?
This marriage between Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama fan base, I just, I think I've always talked about the stages of life. And it's kind of crazy to see people that I worked with or, cousins or whatever go through those stages of life. And I always tell people, there's the stage. I used to talk to Caroline about this because Caroline and I started working together when she was 22. And I was like, there's the stage where everybody starts getting real jobs.
Caroline Fenton, who's now at Yahoo. So for those that don't know,
I would say, there's that stage of life where everybody starts getting real jobs. And then there's the stage of life where people start getting married. And then there's the stage of life where people start having kids. And I think I was like 32 at the time. And I was like, and I think I'm entering the stage of life where people start to get divorced. And at 36 years old, I am really there where people are starting to get divorced. And not only are my friends or people I'm seeing starting to get divorced, there are people that I see that I look at and I'm like, I don't think it's going to work out between those two. I mean, and it's, to be like, oh, they're having a kid. And I'll be like, now I really don't know if it's going to work out.
They're having the kid they're having the kid as the last resort to try to keep it together.
I just, I don't know, Braden. I just don't think it's going to work out. And one thing I've learned in this is that I don't really care, like for my friends. I'm not here to give advice to be like, you need to break up or you guys need to go to counseling or you need to, because look, things are great between Lindsay and I, but I got to worry about my own relationship on an everyday basis, much less like worry about your relationship. So, but there's just those relationships where I look at it and I'm like, I mean, you guys can stay married. It's your business, not mine, but I have no idea why you're still together. And when it comes to Alabama and Kalen DeBoer, I mean, this is an unhappy marriage. It feels like it's unhappy on both sides. It isn't so much that Kalen DeBoer is different than Nick Saban as much as it is Kalen DeBoer is losing in ways that Nick Saban would never lose. Yeah. The thing about Kalen DeBoer is it feels like every time he has really reached the edge with that fan base, he does something to kind of remind you that he's a really good coach and has always been a really good coach, whether it's NAIA or Fresno State or Washington, that he's always been a good coach.
Indiana.
But then he goes and gets housed in the first game of the year by Florida State, or he goes and gets housed by Indiana in the Rose Bowl. And I just know these fans don't like Kalen DeBoer. And quite frankly, I'm not sure Kalen DeBoer likes being the Alabama coach. And so I don't know what's next for them. I don't know what next season is going to look like for them. But that's a huge storyline of this relationship between DeBoer and the Alabama fan base is really teetering on the brink. And I just don't see, given how I think they both feel, I just don't see how this marriage ends up working out long term.
I think it's a really good one. It's a very unique place. It's a very unique place to be the coach. It has just the level of pressure is not going to change and evolve because of modern era of sports, even though the reality is, to your point about like the SEC being weak, like kind of what you said earlier, it's not a Big Ten being dominant thing. It's the SEC maybe being not as strong at the top, which is what I would argue. They don't have the purely dominant program, whether that was Georgia, whether that was Urban Meyer, Florida, or Saban, Alabama. And I think that people have to acknowledge, and I don't think this is impossible for fans, especially Alabama fans, who have been Alabama for so long. There's a reason the two greatest dynasties of all time of the old version of the sport happened at the same place. And Kirby has talked about it. Everybody's talked about it. If you do not acknowledge that the spreading out of talent has affected the top of the SEC, you don't know what you're talking about. And you are putting unfair, albeit I understand fan is short for fanatic and not logical or rational, but you are putting irrational expectations on programs to be old Bama in the future because it's just not possible anymore. You used to be able to have a fourth string defensive end who was a 5-star. You just can't do it anymore. It's not going to happen. You're going to have two of them. You might have a starter and a backup, but you're not going to have third string, fourth string talent like you used to have. And so therefore, injuries are a bigger factor. If you miss on evaluation, it's a bigger factor. Like, it's just the way it's going to be. There's more balance at the top of the sport than ever before. I can look at Texas, and this is what kind of one of mine is, and I want to know what the middle class looks like in the SEC next year. Like, I have a pretty good feeling that I think Texas and Georgia are going to be the two best teams on paper, but there are so many teams with a good case to challenge for a playoff spot next year, and I don't have a clue who it's going to be.
Sure.
Alabama's in that list. Ole Miss is in that list, and I don't trust Pete Golding at all. Tennessee's in that list. You could look at Texas A&M. You could look at Oklahoma. There are LSU with Lane Kiffin now. There are so many good programs, but who is going to have the ability to get to that next tier and compete at the highest level? I don't know. Alabama expects to be on that level with Georgia and Texas. And if Georgia and Texas are on that level, there's no reason Alabama cannot be. But to expect Alabama levels of dynasty in the future, I think is irrational. I think that's gone forever. I don't think you can win 6 in 12 years ever again.
So one of the coldest takes of all time was Nick Saban said, if college football continues on the path it's on, you're going to lose parity. And everybody kind of laughed when he said that, because we all knew that there was no parity in college football, and that Saban was probably the biggest benefactor of the lack of parity in college football. I mean, for a 6-year period, it was Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, and a little bit of Georgia. And that was it for like a 6-8-year period in college football. That's no parity. And so Saban gets up there as the coach at Alabama and says, you're going to lose parity if college football continues on the way it's going. Now, I think you and I can both agree there's never been more parity in our lifetimes in college football than there is now. Do you think Saban knew that and was just being 100% disingenuous, because he knew that if he got up there and said, if you have these rules the way they are, I'm going to lose my dynasty? Or do you think Saban actually believed that parity was going to go away in college football and just got it completely wrong?
It's interesting. I might pick up door number 3 on this, which is that like his version of parity, it might be tied to different things than our version of parity. Like, our version of parity is like more teams can win a championship. That's what the word means to most fans and media members. I think what it meant to him was he who cares the most and invests the most should be able to win the most, right? Because Saban's whole ethos around coaching is, I'm going to be more attention to detail than you. I'm going to work harder than you. I'm going to over-evaluate more than you. We're going to grind. Like, we're going to do more things than you. And at Alabama, with the resources that you have, and the old version of the sport, it was he who has the gold gets the players. And he who has the players wins the championships. And so it's sort of like there's this laissez-faire, like, freedom to that structure that allows you to just do as much as possible to win. And that benefits the person who's willing to work the hardest, spend the most time and money, and be the most invested. And I think in his mind, that's a level playing field, right? Like, the level playing field is the one who does the most is the one who benefits. And I think, so I know that's not like exactly what you answered, but that's a really interesting way to put it. I don't think he was being disingenuous, but I think he views it through his own lens and perception that isn't necessarily grounded in reality of, like,
but that's not parity, is it?
No, it's not. I don't think it is at all. I think it's his definition of it, which is like a level playing field, and therefore my talent and work ethic can win, versus when we look at parity, we see I want I want Texas Tech and Ole Miss and Indiana to have an opportunity to compete for a championship.
Yeah, parity is essentially socialism. And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't know what socialism is, but the NFL is a socialist government, right? The idea is they want everybody to be 9-8 or 8-9. Now, that's not going to happen because some teams are so stupid, like the Raiders and the Browns and the teams. Yes, yeah. The teams that continuously suck and get in their own way. And then there are teams that have Josh Allen at quarterback, so they're automatically going to win every game. They're going to win 11 games every year. But the idea is for a team like New England to be able to get to the playoffs after being god-awful, because they were able to draft Drake May. They were able to play an easy schedule. They had a bunch of money in the quote-unquote cap that they could go out there and spend. I mean, that is the point of all of the rules that the NFL has in place. If there wasn't parity, and if the NFL, just said, okay, whoever has the best resources can win the most, and the Dallas Cowboys would have won a meaningful playoff game within the last 30 years. So when you talk about, well, Saban believes that parity is really just, if I work harder than everybody else, I win. Well, to me, that's the opposite of what parity is. To me, parity is what we've gotten, which is, hey, Nick, you better watch out for Vanderbilt this week, because Vanderbilt can pay the players too. You're getting, how much did you say that SEC revenue was?
It's going to be $72.5 million per school.
Okay, so you're getting $72.5 million to build your team up, and so is Vandy.
Yeah.
And it's like a buddy of mine, Matt Overton, is the former long snapper. He was a long snapper for 15, 20 years in the NFL. He played in Indianapolis. He played in Tennessee. He played in Jacksonville. He played with the Rams. He played with the Cowboys, everywhere. And I remember one time at a Super Bowl party when he was still an active player, and Matt Overton was like, we sign in the NFL without even knowing what the facility looks like. We don't care what the facility looks like, because when it comes to signing with a team, it's okay. You're offering $4 million. You're offering $3 million. I'll go to $4 million. Now, there are some cases where guys don't want to live in a place like Minnesota or Cleveland, and they'd rather live in Miami with no state income tax. And I get it. And that's going to be the case for any industry and any job and anything, no matter what. But it's become pro sports. It's become about the money. Yeah. And when everybody has roughly the same amount of money, you're going to get Vanderbilt to be as competitive with everybody else. That is parity.
I agree with you. I think that's the question, though, is how much revenue balance is there actual, but budgetary balance? Does every team in the Big Ten and the SEC actually have the same amount of money? Because that was my question about Ole Miss coming into
the answer, by the way, to that is no.
That's right. And so my question about Ole Miss was like, they went all in. What I was told is that they got every single penny out of the couch cushions to push all in on Jackson Dart's senior season 2 years ago. And that was all in. They were all in. They went and got everybody in the portal. They built the best roster in school history, and they came up short because they lost to Kentucky on a 4th down in the 4th quarter at home and couldn't get to the playoff. And then they came back and got better. So it's like, wait a second, is Ole Miss out of resources, or can you find more? And honestly, what you're doing is you're squeezing alumni bases for everything that everything that they have. And that's not going to work sustainably long-term. Like, you've got to find out. This is why private equity is snooping around the edges of college football. And it's such a concerning element to the sport. So I think that's all. I think the perspective on how Saban views everything is a very interesting sort of way to look at all of this stuff. And I had not really thought of like how he views it. And I do think he just views like, no. We all start from the goal line, and whoever gets there the fastest with whatever you've got is what parity is. And I think he views it differently.
So you don't think he lied when he said that? You don't think, because again, he either lied or he got it wrong. And by your definition, he doesn't see parity the same way that I see parity. Well, then what you're saying he sees parity as isn't parity. He got it wrong.
Yeah, I agree. And so honestly, I think it's a little bit of everything. I think it's like he has his own skewed perspective. He got it wrong and was disingenuous. He probably was a little bit of everything, to be honest with you. I'm going to go a little bit more specific here to end the show on a few things, because those are some macro topics. I enjoy that.
I do have one question, though, on the whole squeezing out the alumni bases to buy players. You went to UT, and I would say you're a UT fan, right?
I am when I'm with my kids, yeah.
Okay. Braden Gall was one of the early investors in Fizzline, which is a new tech company that has absolutely exploded and changed the way in which we do and live our everyday lives. And because of that, Braden Gall is now worth $5 billion. Ooh. How much money would you donate to UT to be good at football if you had that kind of money? Would you donate money to UT to be good at football?
If I was the diest of diehard fans, the way
I'm talking about you.
Because I'm not.
I'm talking about you, Braden, the guy.
No. I personally but here's the problem: is you can't take away my professional experiences from this equation. Mentally, I can't excise that from my brain, which is that Like, I'm very cynical about college athletics. I think it's a business as well. They're all going to be fine. There's tons of waste with resources in college football, which kind of is the beauty of the sport to some degree. This is why I hate private equity coming into the sport, because private equity comes in and cuts out every bit of waste. They are maximizing efficiency, and college football, from a resource standpoint, is an exercise in inefficiency. There is so much waste in college football. You spend money on a recruit that never pans out. That's totally wasted resources. So I personally can't separate that. Now, if I was a diehard fan and had $5 billion, the real answer to your question is, if I love my team, I would have no problems buying the roster every year. $50 million is a drop in the bucket if you've got $5 billion.
Sure.
So $50 million, if that can buy you a championship, why would you not just buy yourself a championship every year?
I mean, with $5 billion, you can essentially, and I'm not saying you would give all $5 billion, but you could give $500 million and it would endow,
for 10 years. For 10 years.
I'm just going to tell you how I feel about this. In September, so Labor Day weekend, and I mean, I remember talking to you about this, like, as it was happening, because this was when we were launching my show here on the 440 network. And I mean, I got off the phone with you in which we basically agreed that we were going to work together. And I found out that our Australian Shepherd, who was really Lindsay's Australian Shepherd, was sick. Like, as soon as I got off the phone with you, we went to the vet because she was throwing up, and they did an x-ray and they found tumors and all kinds of stuff. And so she made it through the weekend and then passed away. And with the rescue that Lindsay rescued this Australian Shepherd from, the foster told Lindsay, hey, there's a Australian Shepherd in Virginia who's about the age of the pug that is my pug that Lindsay and I have, and they're looking for a home. Not saying you got to jump right into it, but they really could use somebody to adopt this dog. So we, on a Saturday, drove from Nashville to Blacksburg, Virginia, picked up this Australian Shepherd, Layla.
About 7.5 hours.
I love her.
6 hours.
We drove back from Blacksburg, Virginia, and Layla is now a member of our family. And I was sitting there in the back of the car with the dog. Lindsay was driving at this point, and I had the whole folder in front of me of her medical records, and the earliest one said Layla, last name, animal shelter. And that's when I was like, man, that one was tough for me to see. And I know how important Stevie was for us. And Layla was so scared, but I was so glad that we were adding her to our family. And Lindsay had told me that the rescue was going through a tough time financially. So for her birthday, I made a $20,000 donation in Stevie's name to the dog rescue, which basically saved the rescue. The CEO of Australian Shepherds, F-U-R, Forever, called me and was like, seriously? And I was like, yeah, we really loved Stevie. And so they had to wait a month. I mean, I gave it to him right then, but they called Lindsay on her birthday and said that Stevie made a donation to save the rescue or whatever. So I made that donation. And about a week later, I was at Vanderbilt where they were opening the brand new in-zone suites and everything else. And the chancellor got up there, Chancellor Dearmeyer got up there, and he gave a speech about everybody's contribution and everybody working hard. And then Candace Lee got up there and gave a speech, and Clark Lee got up there and gave a speech. And I just texted my buddy who was an athletic director at that time, and I was like, I just donated 20 grand to a dog rescue. And I had the woman that ran the dog rescue call me and basically say, every Australian Shepherd that you see on our Facebook page that gets saved between Halloween and Christmas will be because of the donation that you guys made. And then I see, again, and I understand everybody's got jobs here, but I see them up there saying, thank you to these people for giving us these North End Zone suites. And I'm just like, I could never donate my money to college sports.
I mean, I don't disagree with your point.
After the feeling I got of just thinking about Stevie and Layla and how many other Stevies and Laylas are out there, I just could never donate my money for a college football player to go play well at Louisville. I just couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't. Now, maybe you could say, you could convince me if it was like, okay, Jared, your endowment's going to go to this, and for name, image, and likeness, this person is going to be the spokesperson for the anti-Semitism campaign. And this person over here is going to raise awareness about Australian Shepherds forever. And this person over here is going to, then maybe you could convince me, but you still probably can't. I just could not see myself donating all that money.
Yeah, I your point is like, I'm giving all this money away for what? Like that's I get your point on that one. A couple comments here. Richard said, I put my dog down of 13 years last night. I am sorry for that. I had
Salute to you, Richard.
I had to do that last year it's about a year ago now, and it was pretty brutal. This is not a new show. SEC Football Live every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Central Standard God's time. And Coach says his comment was deleted. I have not seen the comment, so I do not know if it has been deleted. I see all the comments in the comment section.
Coach, what was your comment?
Yeah, drop another one in here. So I do want to get down to some quick, like we've gotten through most of the show, and there's a lot of other like sort of like the Jared Curtis storylines, right? Speaking of Vanderbilt, I am utterly fascinated of life beyond Diego Pavia. They go get the number one quarterback recruit in the nation from Nashville, who is very, very talented. But I'm going to say this now. There is going to be a steep learning curve for him coming into the SEC. I'm just going to say that right now. But I'm fascinated to see it happen, right? I'm fascinated to see Kirby Smart try to do the opposite of roster management and strategy building than the other programs. The one that I'm really interested in is going to be South Carolina. That is the one I am utterly interested in because there is a fan base that is sort of frustrated, but also okay with Shane Beamer to some degree.
They're going to fire his ass.
Lenora Sellers is one of the most talented players in the country.
Overrated.
They've invested in the offensive line. There is upward mobility and space to move up quickly in the conference if you see how teams have done this over the last few years. So if we're trying to drill, like, there's a lot of interesting returning quarterbacks. Gunnar Stockton, Arch Manning, Marcel Reed is a really interesting one. John Mateer is a really interesting one. Can those guys actually elevate those programs to a higher level? Oklahoma and Texas A&M, two teams in the playoff last year. Then there's all the transfers. So there's tons of quarterback stuff, but the one that is most interesting to me is Lenora Sellers because his sort of like rise and then step back, and now they're investing in the offensive line. Beamer's on the hot seat. There's a lot of drama baked in. There's a lot of volatility baked into South Carolina, and it could work really well, or it could fall flat on its face. And to your point, Beamer gets fired. So I'm really interested in South Carolina. That's one that I'm sort of focused on if I have to pick one. That one and Jared Curtis at Vanderbilt. Those are the two that I think I'm really, really interested in. Here's his comment. Thinking about James Pierce and Sneed, you're way better off shooting. What are we talking about?
Yeah, you should probably read that before you go out there.
Yeah. All right. So you didn't get deleted, Coach. It's just not a meaningful comment to our SEC football conversation. Quickly, let me tell everybody about some great and amazing and wonderful places to get a beer in Nashville.
Do I don't get to respond to what you just said?
Yes, but let me do this first because we're running out of time here. So
I love the beers, by the way.
Yazoo Brewing Company, East Nashville Beer Works, both in Wilson County, which is way in East Nashville, way out there by Lebanon and Mount Juliet. And then you got Yazoo up on the river in Madison, and you got Tennessee Brew Works right there in downtown. So if you're downtown, if you're in East Nashville, if you're out in Mount Juliet and Wilson County, if you're up north in Madison or Goodlettsville or Gallatin or Hendersonville, you've got a place to go. So please go check out one of those great and amazing local tap rooms. Local tap rooms are an essential part of a community. Go support them, especially if you're in Nashville after 2 weeks of lost revenue for so many businesses. Please go support a tap room. And according to science and medical experts, it is actually good for your health. The side effects of sharing a beer with somebody you know or don't know is extremely beneficial for your health. So I am channeling your doctor here and telling you to go grab a beer.
When I was in college, and I worked with the women's hoops team at Louisville, our strength coach, Tina Murray, she was a world-class strength coach. She has been the strength coach for the Team USA women's Olympic hockey team in the past. She was the strength coach for the Sacramento Kings. I believe she was the strength coach for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, she was a world-class strength and conditioning coach. And Tina actually told me when I was in college 15 years ago, she said, a glass of wine every night, not bad for you. She was like, beer, especially to your point, those kind of more local brews. She's like, chromium in the beer, a beer is not bad for you. She actually told me that. So I stand by that.
What it is it's not that the actual product has redeeming qualities to you, but wine and beer specifically, not liquor, that's a different science, but wine and beer specifically in moderation, but more importantly, shared in a social way. It is about the side effects of socializing, which again, I'm not going to get into this, but like down regulating your PFC, you build trust faster, you have more fun, you're more attractive to people, etc. It's all the side effects of having a beer in public. So I'm just telling you, go have a beer, preferably at a local tap room.
What is PFC?
Your prefrontal cortex.
Got it.
Yeah, it's where you make all your most difficult and analytical decisions in your brain. Like if you're doing your taxes, you need to have your PFC in perfect working shape. If you're out, if you're being creative, if you're writing a script for a television show, you need to have that sucker down regulated.
So when it comes to the SEC and all the little storylines, you brought up Jared Curtis. I have a really hard time believing that a true freshman quarterback is going to come in at Vanderbilt and all of a sudden light the world on fire. I can't remember the last true freshman quarterback that did that. I mean, I guess Lamar Jackson, is a true freshman quarterback, but he didn't even pop off until his sophomore year. Lamar Jackson didn't win the job out of camp. Bryce Underwood this past year, he didn't light the world on fire for Michigan.
You look very talented, though.
I mean, I remember something that Floyd Reese said to Chris Sanders years ago about receivers. And he said the difference between a high school receiver and a college receiver is night and day. And the difference between a college receiver and a pro receiver is equally as big of a gap. And it's like with quarterback play, I mean, I really believe you need a year on the bench in college football in order to really learn how to play quarterback in college. And so when Vanderbilt got Jared Curtis, I thought the big sign there was, wow, they flipped a Georgia commit to Vandy. That is a statement. But I never thought about it as Jared Curtis is going to be the next great thing at Vanderbilt, because I don't even know how much Jared Curtis is going to play this upcoming year. And if Jared Curtis starts, I have a hard time believing that he's going to be ready to win in the SEC as a true freshman. And then after this year is over, Jared Curtis is probably going to go somewhere else, because that's what all these kids do nowadays. So it's why you have to start him, though, because then if you start him and he learns all that stuff on the field, he's not going to go. He knows it's his seat. He's not going to transfer. That's the whole. That's what the effort you have to go through now. The SEC storylines for me, I think a lot of these will play themselves out as far as, who's going to be good this year. So when we get into the season and all of a sudden somebody starts off 4-0 and they're playing somebody who's 5-1 or whatever,
Kentucky,
that is going to be okay. Now I care about this storyline, whereas I didn't before. But Lane Kiffin has become the Darth Vader of college football, and I think unless you're an LSU fan, of the SEC. And Lane had earned a lot of goodwill at Ole Miss. I don't know how Lane exactly did that, but Lane had earned a lot of goodwill. And now with Lane Kiffin, I do feel like everything that he had earned and had built back, he pissed on and set on fire with the way he exited Ole Miss. I am rooting against Lane Kiffin and LSU. And I'm rooting against Lane Kiffin and LSU for two reasons. Number one, I think Lane is an asshole. And what he did to Ole Miss, I really think is unforgivable. I look at it at the end of the day, and I understand the system screwed up, but I believe that once you have enough money, the idea is we're in this to compete. And with a shot at winning a national championship, Lane Kiffin decided not to compete. And so you may disagree with that. That's how I view it. And no, thank you, Lane Kiffin. I'm rooting against him. The second thing is, it's fun to watch LSU lose. LSU, to their credit, they are the George Steinbrenner New York Yankees of college football. And that is, we'll give you whatever you need to succeed. We'll go out and buy you the best team. We'll give you the best salary, but you better win. And I don't care how close you get, Buck Showalter. Wow, you guys had the lead in Game 5 of the ALDS, and it was a miracle in Seattle, and Griffey runs the bases, and fired. Like, that's how Steinbrenner was back in the day.
I hear you.
Or Steinbrenner was like, we need Alex Rodriguez because Aaron Boone just tore his ACL. Go get him. And that's how LSU is. And I used to root against those Yankee teams. And I used to enjoy it when the Marlins would beat them in the World Series.
Same.
So when Brian Kelly, who was probably as big of an asshole, just a different asshole than Lane Kiffin, when Brian Kelly would lose at LSU, I would get excited about that too. I'd be like,
I
now
would
I feel that way about Lane Kiffin.
I would much rather be around Lane Kiffin's type of assholery than Brian Kelly's. Brian Kelly is just an abrasively awful, mean person. Lane Kiffin is not like that. Lane Kiffin is not a mean, like aggressive, screaming kind of like he's pretentious. He's got a huge ego. There's lots of things going on with Lane. He's a very bizarre human being, but he's not like a Junction Boys type of like, like Brian Kelly type of old school asshole who just like runs you into the ground with verbal abuse all the time. That's
Did you see that video? There was like an AI music with the reggae guys about Lane Kiffin when Lane Kiffin went to the Lane. It got stuck in my head for like a week. It's these, again, I don't even know who made it, but it's an AI produced song.
It was probably AI making AI. It
was incredible. And the chorus it was a reggae song with this duo. And the chorus was, Lane Kiffin is a bitch. Lane Kiffin is a hoe. And they had this incredible music video to go with it. It was all AI.
You called me a hoe? You called me a hoe.
It was incredible. And I have to say, like, to your point about assholery, like Brian Kelly was just a pompous asshole. Like he was a chotch. He was so obnoxious in a different way than Kiffin. Kiffin's just a bitch and a hoe. That's just what it is. Kiffin is a hoe. And my biggest thing, the one thing I'll say about that, because I didn't really comment on it that much, when Kiffin went up to old buddy at the Egg Bowl and was like, call me a hoe in there and see what happens, when he had two, state troopers with him and his own security there. And it's like, what's this guy going to do? Throw a punch? I wish the guy had said to Lane, you are a hoe, because that's what I would have said.
Right.
I learned real early in this that confrontations with coaches is good for business. I'm not saying I'm going out of my way to be confrontational with coaches, but like the way I view it is when somebody comes up to me and is like, you said, and then I usually get pretty defensive about what I said. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I said it, because like
your behavior is proving my point, sir.
It's right. Lane Kiffin's a hoe.
All
so
stop.
I agree with you that Braden Gall on the spot. Is Lane Kiffin a hoe?
No.
The lie detector test determined that was a lie.
I think he had what's the right way to do this? I think he enjoyed his single life.
Here's why I think Lane Kiffin is a hoe. Because I think, again, technically some people have sex to not make love, but that is what it is called, right? Like making love. And so when you pay for sex, you are paying for love making. Like that is what you're paying for. And thus that love is artificial and fake.
Nope.
And Lane Kiffin never loves anybody except Lane Kiffin.
All I heard is that Jared's never fucked before. That's all I've heard.
I'm just saying, Lane Kiffin is a hoe. And that's why I will root against. What do you think? Lane's going to blackball 440 Sports?
There are times to make love, and there are times that you're doing something different, man.
I think Lane Kiffin is the big villain, and I root against him. And if you were to ask me, Jared, why are you rooting against Lane Kiffin? Well, I guess Kentucky, I can't really use them anymore because my friend's the coach, so I can't, say that, oh, yeah, they're my school's biggest rival, and I'll root for them even though I never would have. But I would root for anybody in the SEC to beat LSU. And if you were to ask me why, I'd say because Lane Kiffin's a hoe.
I don't have a problem with people looking at a villain who has done some. I don't know what he's supposed to do. If LSU is the job you've always, this is the same thing I told Tennessee fans in 2009. USC's the better job, guys. He left Tennessee for a better job, and what you're really upset about is
that you have two dream jobs.
Let me finish. You can't leave Tennessee for USC, where you are from, and that was a better program by a country mile at the time. Remember, Tennessee in 2008, when he took the job, was a dumpster fire and would continue to be a dumpster fire for another 10 years after that. USC was the premier program of that decade, and he was going to go take a premier job in his home place, in his home area where he's from. And Tennessee fans were not mad about Lane Kiffin leaving. They were mad inside, if they were honest with themselves, that they weren't as good as USC. And Ole Miss, what they're actually pissed off about is that they know deep down LSU's the better program, and that LSU is where you go to win championships, not Ole Miss. Now, has Kurt Cignetti changed that? Maybe he has. Did Lane Kiffin make the wrong decision? Maybe he did. But at the end of the day, leaving Ole Miss to go to LSU is a very normal, very rational, very traditional move in college athletics. Is Lane Kiffin Darth Vader? Is he the villain? Are people going to root against him the way you're talking about it? That's totally fair. That's totally fine. But he made a decision, what's best for his family. I disagree with maybe how he did it.
What's best for his family?
No, for him. What I mean by that is for him, inside his home. He wanted to go to LSU to win a championship. He's got a huge ego. He's a very talented coach. And LSU is a chaotic place with lots of volatility. It's why I love LSU and the people there and the culture and the city and the town and the vibe. And I think he fits in there very well. Is it combustible? Could it blow up in his face? Absolutely.
And I'm rooting for that.
Could he win championships? Absolutely.
I don't think he'll win a championship at LSU.
Maybe not. It's hard to do it these days. So we'll see.
Then again, everybody wins at LSU, so who knows?
All right. Here's the deal. Go have a local brewery. Go have a local brew at a local tap room. Make sure you check out Yazoo. Make sure you check out Tennessee Brew Works. And make sure you check out East Nashville Beer Works. Great breweries in Middle Tennessee. They distribute all across the state, too. So if you're in the area and you stop at a gas station somewhere outside of Middle Tennessee and you see one of these brews, please try them. They're excellent. They are brewed by people who the margins are small. And you've got the freeze of the last couple of weeks in Tennessee that have really caused margins to be even smaller right now. So please go support some good small businesses, even if it's not the local breweries that I'm promoting here. Go support a good local business in your community. It's absolutely the best thing that you can do. If you've got a few extra dollars, go support a business that's you want to keep that business in your community. So go support them as well. Just like 440 Sports, a small locally owned business as well. Stillman, where can everybody find you socials and on your platform and on your YouTube page and all the podcast apps? Tell everybody.
So anywhere you get your podcast, search Stillman & Company. It's part of the 440 Sports Network, which we are so proud to be a part of. And what'd you think, Braden, of my 440 jacket all over Boston media, pissing everybody off, comparing to the Patriots?
I'm like, what
2006
what are you getting me into, my guy?
But proud to be with the 440 Sports Network on YouTube at Stillman & Co. Or go up there and subscribe to that one, as well as the 440 Sports Network on YouTube. And we are live Monday through Friday, 2 o'clock. And the one thing I absolutely love about this platform and the freedom that this platform gives us is I go live whenever. Well, I can do that, but we go live whenever. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. Like whenever there's been big news, we're able to go live. So always get the notifications and everything on that.
Awesome, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. 5 stars on the podcast app of choice. Thumbs up on YouTube. Please rate, review, subscribe, all that great stuff. We do appreciate you. For Jared, every SEC football live, if you're just now checking us out, every single Wednesday, 9 a.m. Central Time. You're going to have a lot of different voices, normally hosted by Trey Wallace, but you're going to have a lot of different voices over the course of the next month, including the great Jared Stillman. Thank you, my guy. Good to see you. Go have a beer, everybody. Tell them the doctor sent you. I am Braden Gall. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.